Hello again, I'm Robert Fithen, and today I want to talk about the most notorious albums ever. These are the ones that everybody pans, everybody's kind of polarized on. Some people love them, some people hate them. Some of these albums everybody hates. A lot of these albums aren't even considered music. It's like, what the hell were these even released for? These are like the WTF albums. That's what I'm talking about. Not just bad albums or big artists that made, lackluster albums. I already did a video on that a while back. These are albums that are just like, what was even going on? What is this? Those kind of albums. Starting off with a perfect example, Lou Reed, no, not Transformer, Metal Machine Music. I don't have Metal Machine Music, so I'm showing this. Because this, I believe, is the reason that Metal Machine Music was able to be made. I think RCA gave Lou Reed complete artistic control after the huge success of albums like this. And so he got to do whatever he wanted, including putting out a double album of an hour, like 62 minutes of noise. That's what this is. And I don't mean noise as in, I'm calling it, that's just a racket, like, your grandpa heard your rock music and said it was a racket. No, this is literally noise. Separated evenly into 4 pieces that just cut off, and the next side just starts, sort of like they just cut the tape 3 times and just went, here you go, here's the double album. It's this oscillating that goes on for 62 minutes. Now, if you start really listening to it, which I have, I've actually listened to this album all the way through twice, which I think is 2 more times than most people have heard this album. Lou Reed himself has said that this album is not really meant to be really listened to starting at side 1 and you listen to the whole thing, and like most conventional albums. He says this album is supposed to be listened to however you want. You just drop the needle in the middle of side 3, listen to 10 minutes of it and you're done, or listen to 5 minutes, whatever you want. That's how you listen to this album. He himself has said he's never actually heard the whole thing start to finish. So he has been misquoted several times in several different publications, and now it's come out on the internet everywhere that this is not, he didn't really say this, but he's been misquoted as saying that anybody that listens to this album all the way through is a bigger fool than I am, or something like that. But he is the one responsible for it. And it's just one of those albums that the whole album itself is so much more interesting than hearing the album, because like you just wonder how is this possible? How is this out on a major label, a double album? When you think about bands over the history of rock music that tried to make double albums, and the record company is like, no, you're not, we're doing a single album. I think The Clash had an experience with that, with Combat Rock, if I'm not correct. That was originally intended as a double album. Judas Priest was supposed to make Twin Turbo. That turned into just a turbo album. The record company wouldn't let them make a double album. You've got even record companies not allowing a gatefold. The artist wanted a gatefold, and they're like, no, you're getting a single pocket album. Yet Lou Reed is able to make this, a double album that was not only released that way, but also there's a quad version of this. Where was the demand? Was that written into the initial contract? Where was the demand for that? Who in the world heard this and went, we need a quad version of this? Yeah, there's a quad version of this, and it's also available on 8-track in case you want to drive around listening to this. John Bitbop Boom channel, John from the Bitbop Boom channel, has the sealed 8-track of this. Metal Machine Music from Lou Reed, 1975. This came out. It's the thing I've heard it, like I said, twice, and you start deeply listening to it, and it does become, I don't know, kind of interesting, because you start hearing different things. There's so much going on in this whirring noise. You start hearing like, okay, that's a tape sped up there. They're doing that there. Okay, that sounds like a guitar in the distance. Is that guitar playing something, or is that just an echo, or what? You start like trying to delve into the sound and like try to figure out that, or is this all just a big joke? Is this all just a lot of random noise? So it does have that kind of aspect, but I think the most interesting thing is just how in the world is this even a possible thing? Lou Reed's Metal Machine Music, just for 62 minutes. And if you start like moving your head into the speakers, you start like hearing things. Or am I just literally hearing things? I guess, am I metaphorically hearing things, or am I really actually hearing things? So it is kind of, it's definitely I don't know. It's definitely a curio of the times. Lou Reed's Metal Machine Music. I don't know if there's another album like it. I'll talk about one that's been said as like it coming up, but I don't think it really is. So we go from an album that had no vocals, just this noise, to an album that is nothing but a voice with no music. Having Fun with Elvis on Stage from 1974. All this is, have you ever seen the Saturday Night Live clip they did where there's this Bruce Springsteen album? And all it is Bruce Springsteen talking between songs, talking about, this next song I wrote on the boardwalk in New Jersey is about this girl. I remember she was wearing these red pants, whatever. And then they go to the next, they don't play this, they don't have him playing the song. They just go to the next long monologue he has about the next song. And that's all it is. It's a Saturday Night Live skit. I'm sure they got the idea from this album because that's exactly what this is. It's just Elvis Presley talking on stage. It's the little clips between the songs that he did on stage. Some of them last maybe a minute. Some of them last like 5 seconds. It's all strung together. It's basically like Metal Machine music, just two sides unbanded. No, just one big long track on both sides or on each side. And yeah, that's what this is. It's the textbook definition of a cash grab. I've called albums cash grabs before, Beatles remixes. Other people have called other things cash grabs. And usually if you get enough people in the room and you say the word cash grab, somebody will eventually say something like, well, if you think about it, and get ready, I'm going to say something profound here. You might want to take notes. If you think about it, all albums are a cash grab. No, they're really not. A cash grab is a cash grab. And a cash grab, by definition, is basically something that has no artistic merit at all, kind of maybe even deflowers the the artist's previous discography or legacy and is made solely to cash in. There's no artistic merit at all, and that's exactly what this is. In truth, that's the story behind this album. That's why this album exists. There weren't RCA execs sitting around thinking this would be a great idea. That's not why Having Fun with Elvis on Stage exists. The story behind this is Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, wanted to make some money. Cash grab. So he basically took all the little pieces of Elvis on stage, made this album, edited all of them together just nonsensically, and decided to press the record, and he would sell these at concerts because he wanted to make 100% of the profits. He didn't want to use RCA or, they make all the money there. He just gets a percentage. He wants all the money. So he came up with his own label, Boxcar Enterprises, and released this album of Elvis Presley just talking on stage because, he could do that. He had the rights to Elvis just talking. Well, here comes RCA going, no, you don't, actually. So this album had been out for like a couple of months or whatever. RCA gets wind of this and goes, No, we have the rights to everything Elvis does on stage. Everything recorded. That includes the music and that includes the talking between the songs. So since this album was already made and pressed and everything, they basically just took the plates, pressed it themselves, put their label on it, and now you have RCA, a once label that had some sort of merit and integrity, now releasing Having Fun with Elvis on Stage. According to this book, The Worst Rock and Roll Albums of All Time, this is the worst rock and roll album of all time. Although I don't think you'd actually call this rock and roll because it doesn't have any music on it. It's just Elvis talking. There is a part in the middle of side one where there's like a longer segment where he's actually talking about where he's from and how he got his start. And that's sort of interesting. It's almost like an interview segment. That's best part of this album by far. It's like he's just, Elvis isn't a stand-up comedian. He says lighthearted comments, basically. And that's what this is, just strung together, whimsical comments between the songs. By the way, the song I Can't Stop Loving You, he does a cover of that in concert, obviously quite a bit, because he starts the piano riff of this. Before that happens, the piano player knows to start that when Elvis says, "You know what I can't do?" That happens 8 times on this album. Having Fun with Elvis on Stage. A talking album. Well, Mabel, come here quick. I ain't shitting you. It's a talking record. Well, shit, fire and save matches. That's Elvis, and he's talking on a record. Yeah, that's what I said. It's a talking record with Elvis. Ain't we having fun? Yeah, we are. Shoot. Yeah, it's a talking album. By the way, the talking on here, all that Elvis does, fun fact, he never says thank you very much. So if you're waiting for him to do that on this album, it is not going to happen. I planned on doing this video for a while, but I didn't want to do it until I actually owned this album. I'd seen this, my goal since I was a little kid is to have every Elvis Presley album that RCA ever put out in the US up until like 86 or so. I have rules with that, like I only want the first pressings. I only want stereo albums from the 60s. I only want mono albums from the 50s. I've got to find them. I can't order them or, special. They have to be found. And, they have to be obviously great condition and whatever. And they have to be reasonably priced, which is about $3. And I finally found this for $1 after seeing it places for like $20 and stuff. So thank you so much to Gold Pan Records in Hillsboro, Illinois, or maybe it's Nokomis, for finally allowing me to make this video, because now I have my own copy of having fun with Elvis on stage. We're having fun now with Captain Beefheart and his Magic Band and Trout Mask Replica. The gatefold still makes that crackling noise. This is the Third Man Records Record Store Day release. This is one of the most expensive record store records I ever bought. This was like, I don't know, 5 years ago this came out or whatever. And yeah, it was not worth the money. I had not really heard this before I bought it. I heard a lot about it, wanted to get it on vinyl, listen to it properly the right way. This was, I've talked about this a couple times, so I'm not going to go into a long review of this. But I'm not a fan. To say the least. The Moonlight in Vermont or whatever, that's about the highlight on here. Everything else on here is pretty much ridiculous. It sounds like a kid got a reel-to-reel recorder or a cassette or reel-to-reel recorder for Christmas, and he and his friends are just goofing around on it. That's what a lot of this sounds like. There's the story that the band actually rehearsed these songs the way they're heard here over and over and over and over and over again to get them right. I don't know if I believe that. There's a lot of folklore in rock history. You hear these crazy stories like that. It's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. Yes, it was true. We did. Yeah, it's true. 100% true. And then 30 years later, yeah, no, that was true. So I don't know if that's true or not. But yeah, Trout Mask Replica, nice cover. Notorious album. This is polarizing. A lot of people don't like Metal Machine music. I don't know anybody that likes having fun with Elvis on stage, the album. The Talking Record! But this is very polarizing. I don't care for this at all. And that's one of the reasons I don't like it so much, is because you've got these goofballs giving this thing 5 stars. Like allmusic.com gives this 5 stars. There is no way on planet Earth that this is a 5-star album. If you like this album, if you're like, hey, it's pretty cool, I don't know, my big brother had this and we grew up listening to it, laughing with it or whatever, that's fine. I get the nostalgia. I get why some people might like this. It is not a 5-star album. That just insults 5-star albums is what that does. And that's the whole reason I love the vinyl community, because I am completely done at this point with like so-called professional reviews, like allmusic.com and Rolling Stone and all that, the big, I don't care. I would much rather watch real people on YouTube giving their real opinion of albums and not trying to have some other agenda like, well, they're just trying to be provocative, or they're just trying to be cool or whatever, or they're trying to be contrary to popular, they're trying to be edgy or whatever. I don't have time for that nonsense. I've said it before, real people talking about real things, giving real opinions. That's why I watch vinyl community videos. If I kind of get a sense that somebody's trying to be hip or something, or not being giving their real opinion, click, next video, I'm not interested. I don't care how old somebody is. I don't care how many subscribers somebody has. I don't care about somebody's production values or how many whistles and bells they have in their videos. I just care if they're giving real opinions. And I've seen so many opinions that I think are bullshit when it comes to this album that, I just, no, it's not for me. And it's obviously not for Gordon either, as you can see in this photo. Like, I can actually see why somebody would be into this if if you really like kind of nonsensical absurdism that's just way off beat, off kilter type of thing. Just if you like just weird stuff without rhyme or reason, I can see why somebody would like to listen to this and would truly appreciate the release of something like this. And I can get with that. I mean, I really love the Brain Ticket Cottonwood Hill album. I just think that the way that's put together is just it's great with the frantic woman and the whole like music piece that keeps coming in and fading out. And most people would listen to that probably and go, "What is this? Is just nonsense." So I get that, but what I don't like is when mainstream or really anyone goes about this like it's some sort of masterpiece. Like if you don't like this, then there's something wrong with you. You're not up to avant-garde intellect. You're just too dumb to get it or something. I'm not into that. And it seems like that's what a lot of the more mainstream type of things that are giving this 5 stars seem to come off as. And their review doesn't sound sincere at all. It rings as something that's just a lot of bullshit words thrown together in some sort of word salad that's trying to make them sound like on a higher listening level than you are because you don't like this album. So before I go any further, yes, let's talk about the shirt. Yeah, the whole reason I'm wearing this shirt, I've worn it in another video too where I thought it fit rather well with the concept of the video, and it's because, yeah, just like these albums, this shirt is just kind of a hodgepodge of just complete nonsense. So yeah, there's a reason I have this on. Let's go to Yoko Land. She gets 2 entries in this video. She's so special. The first one she does with John Lennon called 2 Virgins. And this is the one that comes in the brown paper bag because under this bag, John and Yoko are both naked, completely, from head to toe, on the front and on the back as well. And I cannot show you that on YouTube, but yeah, they're naked. It's a black and white photo. John, you know, his penis is kind of like it's kind of like up a little bit, you know, where he doesn't look completely flaccid. So, I think if you were a guy and you were going to have your full nudity presented to the world, you'd probably, puff up a little bit, try to look a little more impressive. But he still doesn't look that. I mean, it's not a big penis. But anyway, the album, it's just a sound collage, basically, but it's not anywhere near as interesting or great as Revolution 9 off the Beatles' White Album. I did an entire video a couple years ago on my just total appreciation for that track. I've always loved Revolution 9. I know a lot of people hate it. If they do that game where, let's take the White Album and make it a single album, and the first thing that goes is Revolution 9. I did a whole thing about you cannot take off Revolution 9. That is a huge part of the White. That's what makes it the White Album. But anyway, this is not Revolution 9. This is just a long, kind of boring thing with just a lot of just like incidental type things that don't seem to go together, whereas Revolution 9 was this tight, tight in comparison, piece with a lot of stereo, swirling and effects going on and this nightmare scenario. A lot of it, to my ears as a 10-year-old, when I first heard it, was frightening. That could be it too. I was introduced to Revolution 9 as a 9 or 10-year-old. I was introduced to this, I think, the first time I heard this, I was probably in my early 20s. So that probably has something to do with it as well. But, yeah, I mean, there's some interesting sounds on here, like whatever that train whistle sounding thing is, where they manipulate the tape and it's like, that's okay. But a lot of this is just kind of really incidental sounding. And I think that was the point. They wanted it to sound like you were just kind of hanging out with them in their house and they were playing some crazy tape loops for you. This was apparently recorded when they first met, when John's wife was off on vacation and he was hanging out with Yoko. And they were just experimenting in John's home studio with different tape loops and stuff. This is recorded in mono. And that's another thing that, if you're going to do a sound collage of random stuff, I like the stereo. You got to do stereo where it's, popping out all over. This is mono reproduced in fake stereo. And occasionally they'll just pan the whole thing a little bit left to right. But it's just not, it's worth a listen for curiosity's sake. But it's not Revolution 9. And of course, Revolution 9, part of the White Album, you get that Paul McCartney intro with take me back, take me back. Can you take me back? Like he doesn't want to go into Revolution 9. You get the sweet relief from Ringo as he takes you out of this nightmare Revolution 9 track and sends you off on a sweet lullaby with good night. Obviously none of that's here. It's just this whole album is just this. And so, yeah, it's worth a listen just to satisfy your curiosity, similar to like Metal Machine music or whatever. But it's not something that you're going to throw on and be like, oh, mind blown. I don't think your mind's going to be blown with this one. And they did 2 follow-ups to this as well, the Life with the Lions and then the Wedding album. So they were obviously satisfied with the results. So, yeah, this was another one that was released on album and cassette and 8-track with 2 virgins, John and Yoko. Yoko Ono's Plastic Ono Band album looking very similar to John Lennon's Plastic Ono Band album. The only difference is, in this one, John is sitting against the tree and Yoko's leaning on him. And this one, Yoko's sitting against the tree and John is leaning against her. The back covers, though, will tell you that these are completely different albums. Actually, the tree is a little different here. You see more of the extended branch on the Yoko album, as it were. But yeah, Yoko's Plastic Ono Band released, I believe, simultaneously, if not around the same time. Apple Records, and yeah, it's different. It's a little avant-garde in itself, but it is songs, unlike the 2 Virgins, which is just a sound collage. This is actual music on here. And what a band! You've got John Lennon on guitar, you've got Klaus Voormann on bass, you've got Ringo Starr on the drums. And it really, they rock out on some of the tracks on this album. I love the first song called Why. It's definitely the best track on here. It just starts with this explosion of music, and they're just rocking out the electric guitar, and just like a great rock tune. She's on there just screaming, why, why, why? If you've had something traumatic happen in your life that makes no sense to you, and you just, have something, and people are just like, why? This really just kind of is that put to song. I mean, if you've had some kind of traumatic experience and you want to experience a song that really kind of illustrates what you're feeling, I think Why from Yoko Ono would be a good contender. I'm not even trying to be sarcastic. I really like the way that song turned out. She's not just doing that thing. She's actually screaming why over and over again. I think her type of vocal thing really works with the way the band is playing and just rocking in that song. The next song is called Why Not? Not as good as Why. The music slows down. She's allowed to be a little more upfront, and her thing goes a little more off the rails. I'm not a fan at all of that B-side of Live Peace in Toronto, where she's just screaming for an entire album side while the band plays. It's not cohesive to me. It doesn't sound like it goes together. It just sounds like a mess. The Why song on here does not sound like that. It sounds like the music is complementing her vocal and vice versa. Why Not, though? Everything slows down a little bit and it kind of brings her out a little more. I do like the third track where her voice has kind of got an effect on it, and it's used more like a musical instrument. It's called Greenfield Morning. I pushed an empty baby carriage all over the city. And the most intriguing thing about that song is its title, because, I'm listening to this, every time I hear this song or see this title, it's really kind of sad, because why would somebody be pushing an empty baby carriage all over the city? Well, there's probably a reason for that, and the reason is probably a pretty sad one. And so, yeah, I think the song is in tune with that, and again, she's being very emotional in her own Yoko Ono kind of way. And I think it kind of works for that song. Like I said, there's a big effect on her voice, and I think it really works. My 2 favorite tracks on the album, Why and the Push the Empty Baby Carriage All Over the City. Side 2 starts with a song that features Ornette Coleman, who I just got to appreciate just a month ago when I did my jazz thing. I didn't know that much about him, but I really like his way out free jazz stuff. I like that much, much more than I like Miles Davis or who's the other guy, John Coltrane, or any of those kind of, jazz people. What's the one guy that's maybe it's John Coltrane with A Love Supreme. I'm not into that, but I really like the Ornette Coleman album I heard. And on here, unfortunately, he's on the worst track on the album, which opens side 2, called AOS, which I guess was recorded live in a warm-up at a concert they were going to have. He's doing his trumpet thing where he's all over the place. She's all over the place. And it doesn't really work for me. Touch Me, and there's some jungle rhythms that start to come into thing, making the music a little more interesting on the closing track. There's only 6 tracks on here, and that one's called Paper Shoes. I do like this album a little more than I think most people do, especially that Y song. I think a lot of people are very dismissive, if not very angry, about Yoko Ono. They do not like her. Of course, she was rumored to be the reason the Beatles broke up for years and years and years. That was the story. And then we find out later, okay, well, the Beatles were probably going to break up anyway. She was in the studio bothering everybody. Then you see that Get Back movie, and it's like, well, yeah, so was Linda McCartney with her little girl running around, bothering everybody. So it seemed like everybody was just in the studio. But yeah, so people don't like Yoko Ono. I never had that much of a problem with her. I guess my whole thing is I can appreciate Yoko Ono a lot more when it's a Yoko Ono showcase that you're going there for Yoko Ono. Like, this is a Yoko Ono album. If you don't like Yoko Ono, probably shouldn't be listening to this album, And there are parts of it that I can appreciate, but I'm not so into it at all when it's like she just kind of is there and somebody else's thing. Like the Toronto Peace thing, a side 2, where it's supposed to be this revival concert with Little Richard and Chuck Berry and all these different people and Eric Clapton's playing with John Lennon, and it's this Elvis Cooper's band is backing, the oldies acts. And then Yoko Ono shows up and just starts screaming. I can understand why the audience is like, really? The same thing with like when the performance, whatever that was on TV, where, John Lennon's doing Cold Turkey. Great song. And then she just starts screaming in the background. The one where, oh my God, it's John Lennon and Chuck Berry doing Johnny Be Good. And she seems to think it adds something to the performance just to stand back there and go, The only thing good about that whole thing is the look on Chuck Berry's face. Not so much into Double Fantasy where you're buying a John Lennon album. Let's be honest, you're buying a John Lennon album, but every other song is Yoko Ono trying to do pop music. I'm not into that. I don't know what a lot of her other albums sound like, Seasons of Glass and that kind of thing, but I can appreciate a couple of tracks on this album, where it's a Yoko Ono album, it's her thing. So if you're into her thing, you probably like a lot of this album. I will say though, I really like the video from Later Days, where she's just standing in the street and there's people there ready for a performance, and then suddenly she just goes, ah, and just starts screaming. I mean, you got to appreciate, or maybe you don't, but I got to appreciate somebody who can pull that off for decades and still be, relevant. But she's somebody that definitely did her own thing. I mean, she was not going to compromise whatever her art or whatever she was doing for anybody else, John Lennon or Beatles fans or anybody. So I always appreciated that. But she was, she's kind of known as kind of a cold person. And not a very nice person to be around, very, to the point and taking no bullshit. A lot of people have a problem with that. But I don't know Yoko Ono, so I can't speak to that effect, but I never really had that big of a problem with her. But yeah, a lot of her music I don't want to listen to all the time, but I do like the opening track on here, and I really think that the pushing the baby carriage all over the city, empty baby carriage, is a really sad kind of image that conjures up, and the song kind of goes with that. So, but a side 2 I could probably not hear again, and I'd be fine. But yeah, this is the companion to this, and obviously I definitely prefer this album. But this one still has the same kind of, if you're just listening to the band, it has the same kind of production sound as this, that very just raw, super raw. I mean, raw to the point of primal kind of recording technique where it's just bass and drums and guitar, and there's none of this flanging or any kind of effects or any kind of, let's get this, perfect tone or this perfect mix. It just sounds like, there's some very raw emotions in both of these, kind of, John is doing a lot of screaming and whatever on this one too, just kind of primal stuff. So I think these two albums go together, very well. And yeah, Yoko Ono's Plastic Ono Band, a much bigger fan of that than I am of their avant-garde Two Virgins. And I've never actually heard the follow-ups. Maybe I should hear those someday, the Life with the Lions or the Wedding album. If you've heard either of those two albums, let me know in the comments if they're very similar to Two Virgins or if they're different, they're better, they're worse, don't waste your time. Whatever comment you have on those two, let me know in the comments section. So what about Arc from Neil Young and Crazy Horse? Here's another album that's kind of like a cross between having fun with Elvis on stage and Metal Machine music, if you can imagine that. It's a 35-minute long album that is a lot of guitar kind of feedback. It's not exactly like squealing like squelch, type. No, that's not the thing you do with a straw. Squelch. It's basically like guitar tone feedback. There is some squealy kind of feedback, but it does have Neil Young trying to start the song like a hurricane twice, similar to Elvis trying to start I Can't Stop Loving You 8 times. But it's just a lot of... It's that kind of thing. So it's a lot more varied of a sound, certainly, than Metal Machine music. But it is that. The release of this does make a lot more sense because it was originally released as a bonus disc on the Weld live double disc that came out in 92. So it was basically something that you got for free with Weld. So at least that makes a little more sense. It does sound like something that would be like a free, like, extra disc or something like that. So yeah, Neil Young's Arc, A-R-C, and it's basically something that you're waiting for the song to start when you're listening to this whole thing. It is recorded from various concerts, and so unlike the Elvis one, which just sounds like a bunch of clips, this does seem to have a flow to it that's natural. You can't tell where one concert footage is from based on another. It does have this kind of seamlessness to it, so at least there's that. So all of the albums that I'm talking about today have, kind of rock oriented in one way or another, except for one. This one. This is actually the earliest album on the list, and it comes from a guy named Sam Sachs, and the album is called Play It Again, Sam, from 1961. If you've absolutely never heard of this album, that is fine. I had never heard of it either. What turned me onto this album was the As It Should Be channel. Tommy Von Voigt on that channel was talking about this as one of his, like, what in the hell is this? How was this made? Does this exist albums? And yes, indeed, listening to this, that is the question. There's very little information about Mr. Sachs on the internet and why this album does indeed exist. I think what happened is it's one of those things where this guy had some money and just paid to be in a studio, wanted to make a record, and did, basically. He has no singing talent whatsoever. There's a complete disregard for any kind of tempo or rhythm. It's just him and a piano player. The piano player sounds proficient. He's playing the songs. All of these songs are just basically the American standards. The love songs from the 40s and 50s or whatever. He's doing his take on them. And this really has to be heard. This guy just blows through these songs. Just like I said, no regard whatever for like rhythm or anything. He just blows through the lyrics. I'll give you an idea of how quick these songs are. There are 12 tracks on this album. The album is a little under 19 minutes long. He just, once I had a secret love, and it lived within the heart of me, and then soon the secret love became impatient to be free, and so I saw a friendly star, and the way that all dreamers do, and my secret love is not a secret anymore. That's the way he sings. This high thing up here, and just racing right through them, and the piano player's trying to keep up, and pretty soon just starts skipping over entire bars just to try to... The funniest thing is this guy introduces the songs himself. Like, Love is a Many Splendid Thing by Sam Sachs. And then starts the song after the piano player has already started. So there's no way to edit this out. So in a way, this album was kind of ahead of its time because a lot of the 70s and 80s, you'd hear that. They'd keep that on the album for some reason, like, blah, 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 take one, blah, 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 take 47. This guy was doing that before everybody else. Every single song. And a couple of times he feels as though he's messed up and has to start again. And that's really funny, too, because he's messed up all of these songs. I don't know why he picks, like, 2 or 3 of them that I messed up there. Let me start again. Secret Love by Sam Sachs. Oh, once I had a secret love to live with it. It's like the engineer pipes in a few times and goes, no, it sounded fine to me. He obviously just wants to get the hell out of there, make his money, maybe upgrade some equipment so he can record a real album by a real performer at one point. But yeah, this guy, this album is very rare. I've never seen it anywhere out, in person. But this is on eBay if you'd want to buy it. It's going for $150. It's on Discogs for $250. No takers yet. Although I did look at the history, this has sold for upwards of $300, $200. So people have purchased this album. I don't know. Discogs has this listed under all kinds of different cool jazz, pop vocal, comedy. I don't know if the comedy is intentional. If it is, they're playing it really straight. I mean, kudos to them for making a comedy record that never lifts the veil, because this thing is just incredible. This is even not. This guy, like I said, I think he just paid to do a studio. He wanted to make a record, and he just has no idea about vocal structure, about how to sing, maybe, and just does all of these popular songs, pop vocal type stuff from the golden age of American songbook. And yeah, Sam sax. Play it again, Sam. I don't think I ever will, though. So up next is an album from Sonic Youth and Yamatsuka Ai from the Boredoms. They have teamed up to make something called TV Shit. This is the only one of these albums that actually has the word shit right there in the title to let you know. This is actually an EP. It's a single-sided LP, but so it's an EP. It's really only about 15 minutes long, and it's basically 4 songs, all of which are called No 2. You have No 2 Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4, and it's apparently a cover of Youth Brigade, the Washington, D.C. version of Youth Brigade, not the other band from L.A. There's 2 different bands. The band that they're talking about on here, they're covering, only came out with 1 EP. Their song, No 2, is covered here. It's basically just, the Sonic Youth, the noise stuff, the feedback, and then somebody just screaming no. Similar to the Yoko Ono, instead of screaming why, though, and having an actual song composition going on, they're just screaming no the entire time. Part 2 is just more noise, just more screaming. There's actually a piece where it sounds like somebody's listening to Nazareth's Whiskey Drinking Woman out of nowhere. That you have that, like it's being played in a living room or something, and somebody's just recording it. Yeah, it's just craziness through this whole thing. Just a lot of screaming. By the time you get to part 4, they're like, "Oh shit! Whoa! Shit! Shit! Oh shit!" It's like they're, I don't know, like they're some kind of an unbelievable high or something like that. But if you like Sonic Youth, this is that to the extreme. If you don't like Sonic Youth, you will not like this at all. So I just think this is just a bizarre, just like a lot of just bizarre. Just like, why is this even pressed onto vinyl? But it is. It's apparently fairly rare. I got this for free in college and kept it all these years. TV Shit from Sonic Youth and the Yamatsuka from the Boredoms. And if I could have made a whole thing on the Boredoms as well with their craziness on Pop Tatari and this Super Roots EP. But craziness from the Boredoms. They get together. Actually, Mark Arm is a part of track 1 too. He's a contributor somehow. Jay Mascis is also somehow a contributor from Dinosaur Jr. I'm assuming they're adding to the guitar feedback and the noise. But yeah, not something, again, a curio, like what in the world is this? But not something that you'd want to necessarily listen to again and again. And oh my God, this is the greatest album ever. Although allmusic.com, just like in true fashion for those guys, does give this 3 stars. I would give this more like a 1.5 stars or something like that. And I think that's fairly being generous. So now we move on to the final album that I'm going to talk about today. And I saved one of the most conventional albums for last. And when you say the Shaggs' Philosophy of the World from 1969 is the most conventional album on your list, well, that is really saying something. First got acquainted with this again in this book, The Worst Rock and Roll Records of All Time. I got this in the early 90s. I don't know when this is actually from. But of course, Having Fun with Elvis on Stage is number 1. Number 2 is Metal Machine Music. But the Shaggs come in at number 15. And there's all sorts of like popular albums between them, like Self-Portrait from Bob Dylan. Not a great album if you've ever heard that. Basically a middle finger to his record company, doing covers of Gordon Lightfoot and stuff like that. Anyway, Jethro Tull, Aqualung is like number 12 or something, also in there before the Shaggs, like higher up on the list of the worst rock and roll albums of all time. Queen 2 but for some reason they think the Shaggs come in at number 15. This is a Notorious album. These three poor girls were forced to make this album by their father, as their dying mother, or I think maybe it was his mother, their grandmother, made these predictions that I don't remember what the first prediction was. The second prediction was he was going to have 2 sons. Those 2 predictions came true, and the third prediction was your daughters are going to start a rock band that is going to be world-renowned, very famous. And oddly enough, as bizarre as this album sounds and as amateurish and unfocused as this is, that came true. So the mom's or the grandmother's predictions all came true. That just to add to the strangeness of this album. It's another one of these things like, how did this get made? But this actually has a story, and it's fascinating. The father basically, with these predictions, forced these girls to form this band, do this music. They had no interest in doing it at all, no interest in playing instruments. They had no technique. They had no training. They had no skills. And they just were forced to do this by their father. Some of the songs on here, there's one about how the parents know everything. You should trust the parents because they're the only ones that care about you. Sounds like they're singing at like some sort of hostage video situation where they're like there's somebody with a gun on them right off camera or something like that. But yeah, it's very wow. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating listen. It's not a pleasant listen. But it is fascinating. The drumming does not match. It's very, rudimentary drumming, but it does not match the guitar go at all. The guitar sounds like somebody just picked up a guitar for the first time and is just strumming. There's no like tone. They're not even on. I don't even think they're tuned properly, or the one guitar tuned properly, and they're just strumming. Like somebody who just picked up a guitar for the first time and plugged it into an amp and doesn't know how to use a guitar, doesn't know how to play guitar, doesn't know how to use an amp. So there's that sound. The singing, though, pretty much free of melody, free of like excitement or passion. It's just this kind of droning kind of, it's Halloween, and everything is so much fun, and we're going to have a real good time. Everyone looks forward to Halloween. But the thing is, the 2 girls are singing together throughout the entire album, and they're in complete unison the entire time. Like they've really practiced these songs again and again. For as bad as they sound, they're actually practiced. They had to sound like this. Again, fascinating, fascinating album. And I think a lot of groups, especially in the 90s when this started gaining more notoriety, started trying to sound like them. The whole lo-fi thing, the whole girls singing like this, and then they sing like this. But this is for real, though. That's the thing. This is not somebody pretending. This is the real deal. If you're looking for real lo-fi, real kind of curio recording, the completely lack of talent, this is authentic. You're not going to get more authentic than this. A lot of 90s posers trying to be the Shaggs. There's only one Shaggs. And this album is it. I think there was another actual album put out in the 90s of outtakes. I can't imagine what that would even sound like. Stuff that's not good enough for this album. Of course, the most popular track, the single, My Pal Foot Foot, where they go to visit Foot Foot, but Foot Foot doesn't live there anymore. And wow. The song It's Halloween, though, actually does feature this like fuzz guitar out of nowhere. It's only done for like a few notes, and we're just like, where did that come from? But yeah, the song about how parents are special, you should always listen to your parents. Parents know everything. They're the only ones that care about you. You can just tell they're being forced to do this. And it is really kind of sad. I mean, some people have even claimed this album is a product of parental abuse because the dad was quite the strange guy. He was very humorless. He was odd. He apparently, allegedly, may have abused the girls in more ways than one, not just the psychological stuff of making them do this. They went on stage, played this stuff, were laughed at and ridiculed. They hated it. They weren't given the ability to have social lives. They couldn't have friends. They couldn't have boyfriends. So it is kind of a sad thing to have to listen to, but they've grown up and they've accepted their role as this ridiculous band, and they kind of have fun with it. They've reunited. One of them, unfortunately, has passed away. But before that, they had reunited and done concerts and had fun with it. So at least there's that. They have good attitudes about their musical legacy. But yeah, the Shaggs, I'd never heard this before, had heard about it all these years, always meant to listen to it at one point. This video was a great excuse to finally do that, and I might actually listen to this again at one point just because it's so fascinating. I mean, the thing about Metal Machine music and its how is this made? Why is this a double album? Why was this released in quad? All these questions. But it is Lou Reed, so he's in control. That's not really a story. The story is he was the boss. He wanted to do what he wanted. He got to do it. The Elvis album, it has a story. Colonel Tom Parker wanted to make some money, didn't want to go through RCA. RCA said, no, you can't do that. RCA releases it. There's the story. Arc from Neil Young, Crazy Horse, it's a bonus album. There's the story. This one, though, definitely has the most. You could make has there been a movie made about this? Is there a documentary about the Shaggs that's like legitimate? There could actually be a theatrical like docudrama made about this. It would be very interesting. Maybe one day. The Shaggs' philosophy of the world. The rich want to be poor. No, they don't. The poor want to be rich. The fat people want what the skinny people want. The skinny people want what the fat people. That's their philosophy of the world. Title track. The Shaggs, out of all of these albums, if I could suggest one for you to actually hear, it would be this one. It is truly, I don't know, I would almost say iconic. There's nothing that sounds like it, and it's completely authentic, like I said, seemingly something that a lot of people, especially in the 90s and early 2000s, have tried to emulate without success. So those are my most notorious album reviews. These things, some of them I've heard before, some of them I had to re-listen to again for like the 7th or 8th time, like that Trout mask replica for this video. But it was definitely an experience, and hopefully you had a good experience watching the video and listening to me ramble on about these. If you have any notorious albums like similar to these, not just bad albums like Elton John Leather Jackets or Victim of Love or something like that, but like actual like what in the hell is this kind of albums, let me know in the comments. Maybe I'll do a follow-up at one point. But this is definitely enough for right now. I'm Robert Fithen. Again, thank you so much for watching.